Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. On the breakup map, still pretty icy up here in the central and northern river areas there, like the Yukon, Porcupine River, of course the North Slope iced up, but pretty well ice-free now in the Susitna Valley and the Tanana River here breaking up. Looks like it's completely open here on down, then you start gradually getting more ice before you get to the junction there with the other river, and still pretty well iced up here, but the Kuskokwim breaking up. And for the fire danger, where it went. Anyway, for satellite imagery today, or yesterday, we had low pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska. We had some moisture streaming northward through this area, this batch hanging down to the south from the North Gulf Coast southward. Another south to north oriented cloud feature here cutting across the extreme southern southeast coast. Most of the moisture, though, from about that area eastward into British Columbia, clearing over the Copper River Basin. A little more clearing out here to the west, but still some pretty cloudy conditions there for the Seward Peninsula in toward eastern Norton Sound, as well as over the northern Bering Sea. And then out to the west, storm system moving northeastward here. The center south of the central Aleutians, southwest flow pushing a lot of moisture up in across the eastern Aleutians, up toward the Pribilof Islands. And again, in advance of that, a break, sunshine occurring over Bristol Bay. North slope, pretty well cloudy from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast there. Throughout much of the day, a few breaks here back to the west toward the Noatak Valley areas. And looking at today's imagery, you can see pretty good cloud shield here with that system. And it looks like the front, at least 5 a.m. this morning, very close to the eastern Aleutians, lifting northward and pushing eastward, the whole thing kind of rotating up, broadsiding the coast of Bristol Bay, at least with the clouds. Heavy precipitation still down to the south. Pretty gusty winds, gale force in some areas here across the Alaska Peninsula. All that beginning to edge in toward Kodiak Island. And then back to the west, coming around the back side of that, northerly winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour there over the central Aleutians out toward the west before they diminish. And up to the north, not a lot of change up there, still mostly cloudy. Conditions about the same for the Arctic coast area into the Chukchi Sea and northern Bering. Lots of sunshine today, very nice day here south central Alaska, on up into the central interior areas as well as the Copper River Basin, and a lot of moisture streaming northwestward here. So that kept the showers occasionally there, mostly over toward the eastern border of the Panhandle. Looked like more sunshine out to the coast there and into the Gulf of Alaska. Rolling that through again, you can see the motion here streaming northwest, all mostly staying into Canada, some of that spilling across the border, but the more showery conditions, heavy precipitation staying off to the east. And on the analysis for today, there's the precipitation field associated with that front. Still south of King Salmon, from about Pilot Point on down with the gusty winds. Gale force gusts possible here across the Alaska Peninsula, a little more brisk in advance of the front out through this area in the tighter gradient north of the low center and between the high up over the Russian Far East, but those winds diminish as you head up towards St. Lawrence Island, becoming barely a breeze from there on northward. Light winds along the Arctic coast and North Slope. Scattered showers developing, but nothing really too extensive here over the interior. To a lesser extent over the eastern interior, or maybe a little bit more shower activity there this afternoon here, especially in this area, cloudiness right through there. Otherwise, just pretty widely scattered conditions all the way up to the Brooks Range. and that infamous flurries and fog still plaguing the central and eastern Arctic coast, but nothing too serious there. And again, along the southeast coast, big low complex here over southwestern Canada, British Columbia, and that moisture edging over, but not quite making it across the border. A few scattered showers and then some clouds, as well as some clearing that increased here as you head out toward the coastline. And this frontal system, again, right through this area this afternoon at about 3 to 4 p.m. and then more showers at the main low center, which is staying south of the Aleutian chain there, just to the south. And then you can see a much tighter gradient back here to the west from about Adak on out to Shimia, and that's where the strongest north to northeast winds were occurring. And that'll continue through tonight. The low center gradually pulling eastward, but not moving too fast. 981 millibars on the low center now just southwest of Nikolsky. The front arcing up into the southwest coast right across and near Nunivak Island late tonight after midnight toward morning, with rain spreading with it. Precipitation could be some areas mixed with snow here in the Yukon Delta, but generally nothing significant in the way of snowfall. It'll be mostly in the form of rain back down to the southwest across Bristol Bay. Now you can see it's shifting inland. Areas of rain, nothing heavy though. A little bit heavier though for Kodiak Island, that southeast flow, a little gustier winds, and staying nice here over south central Alaska, especially this evening. Just some variable clouds from Cook Inlet, the Kenai Peninsula, to mostly clear over the Copper River Basin, and fairly nice conditions. Really just kind of a default high here with a pressure of 1,016 millibars. Really just actually an area in between two low pressure systems, with the one well over into Canada and that lingering shower threat existing along the eastern border there of the Panhandle, with maybe some developing showers here around Prince of Wales Island during the evening tonight, some of that moisture breaking off. And you could see some shower activity there, Craig, Klawock, on down to Heidelberg, and those staying dry up to the north with light winds. Dry through the Copper River Basin, as I mentioned, into the eastern interior, 40-mile country, Eagle on down into the greater Fairbanks area. Maybe some isolated showers here over the northern Koyukuk Valley, possibly the Brooks Range. Very light snow showers or flurries. Again, no change up there for the North Slope and the Arctic coastal areas. And light, barely a breeze again here for the northeast winds from the south or the northwest coast down across St. Lawrence Island. Starting to pick up a little bit there, and then much stronger though coming down from the north here over the western central Aleutian areas. Again, you could see gusts possibly up to 50 miles an hour with gale force winds. Reverse flow here south to southeast, and not nearly as strong across the Alaska Peninsula, but that southerly flow will continue to pump surges of moisture in, keeping the showery, unsettled conditions there for the Alaska Peninsula, especially on the Pacific side, on down across the eastern Aleutians. And this front forecast for tomorrow to continue edging its way on in slowly. Actually, this portion breaking up quite a bit, becoming weak. Just some areas of showers or light rain along the main frontal boundary there, with clouds to the north, a little bit to the south. Staying nice, mostly sunny there for the western interior, west central interior, on up across Kotzebue Sound into the Noatak Valley areas. Kobuk, Koyukuk, and upper Yukon Valley looking really good tomorrow. Maybe a chance of some moisture here over the eastern Brooks Range, very insignificant as well as the Arctic coast there. About the same weather you've seen for the last couple of days, mostly cloudy, a few flurries or light snow showers, nothing significant at all. And then we've got surface ridging occurring here off the coast, shifting inland across the Panhandle, but really not strong enough to shut the shower activity off completely. Still looking in some areas mostly cloudy, especially along the coast, risk of a shower there, as well as down over towards Stewart and Hyder, maybe as far north as Petersburg, possibly, or Wrangell, possibly Petersburg, but Juneau, Haines, Skagway, Gustavus staying dry, maybe some sunshine tomorrow. Nice along the North Gulf Coast, partly sunny skies there or better, and definitely more sun in the Copper River Basin. And this front kind of wraps back around the moisture field anyway. Mixed precipitation here over the northern Bering Sea from close to St. Lawrence Island southward, but strong winds, more of a weather factor out here. Strong north winds by comparison there for the central Aleutian areas. And this low starting to shift off to the southeast there, slide off to the southeast a little bit as a new system swings northward. So that'll probably bring an increase in the winds there across Kodiak Island. if this forecast works out. Late tomorrow afternoon and evening, you can see the front here in a tighter pressure field with that. And that looks like it's going to continue northward and bring gale force winds up into the North Gulf Coast. The way it looks at this point in time, on Sunday, that swings on up and look for a pretty good field of gale force winds, anywhere from 35 to as high as 45 knots here, coming into the North Gulf Coast, back down across Kodiak Island. Of course, when the front shifts northward, those winds will be coming down in the afternoon, becoming a little more southeasterly. Low center roughly, again, possibly a little bit different position than what this is showing, but right now it looks like, at least with the forecast model here, it'll be close to the Central Alaska Peninsula areas there in Nelson Lagoon, and some clouds and light rain extending north just east of the Pribilofs, but catching Macoriac and Nunivak Island, and then that area of north winds there, a little chillier temperatures coming eastward here, but not quite as strong in those north winds. Possibly nothing in the gale force variety, but 25 to 30 knots definitely possible here, all the way down to roughly Atka, coming in toward Nikolsky, and a good ridge farther to the west there over the western Aleutians and Bering Sea, all the way up into the Russian Far East. And then late Sunday, this front out here will swing those winds around to the southwest over the far western Aleutians. Otherwise, again, no change for the Arctic coast and North Slope areas. Mostly sunny over the interior, light winds, with this front as it comes northward actually having a stabilizing effect over much of the interior, which will result in less of a chance of scattered showers. Not that it will be all that great tomorrow, but for the Panhandle, wet conditions, looks like periods of rain, definitely cloudy from Dixon Entrance across the entire southeast coast, westward, North Gulf Coast, Whittier, definitely rain, Seward in those areas. Rain changing to showers in the afternoon for Kodiak Island. Looks like cloudy skies, south central Alaska, Cook Inlet. Less precipitation due to downsloping wind flow. Susitna Valley dry with an increasing chance of moisture over toward the Alaska Range here. Otherwise, looking at temperatures, moving on to temperatures for the southeast coast, anywhere from upper 40s to as high as the lower 60s, with 63 degrees at Skagway this afternoon. Otherwise down to 49 there at Klawock, with 50 at Hyder, and a 56-degree reading there for Cordova. Lower to mid-50s for the Kenai Peninsula, with 55 at Palmer. Edging up towards 60, but not quite. Talkeetna at 58, about the same over in Gulkana. Farther north, Tanana Valley, lower to mid-50s this afternoon there, with 54 at Fairbanks, 53 at Delta, and pretty uniform temperature pattern there on out toward the Eagle area and north to Fort Yukon. Back to the west, McGrath 53 degrees, and mid-50s on down toward Bethel. So north of there, not much of a temperature change here. Again, falling to about 40 degrees or 50 degrees at Bettles, with the Arctic coast all in the lower 20s, lower 30s here for Kotzebue Sound, and the Bering Sea shaping up something like this, 30s for the Pribilofs, mid-40s for the eastern Aleutians, and lower 40s, warm into the mid-50s up over northeast Bristol Bay. And for the lows tonight, single numbers and teens, Arctic coast, North Slope, mild here, above freezing over the southwest interior, 30 to 35-ish or so for south central Alaska, chillier in the Copper River Basin, 30s to near 40 for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, some nice 60s coming in here, Kuskokwim Valley across the Fairbanks area northward, and even the Susitna Valley approaching 60 once again. For flying weather tomorrow morning, good VFR central eastern interior, areas of IFR central Arctic coast eastward, a band here from the southwest coast to north of the Pribilofs, and then becoming marginal to the south. IFR for Kodiak Island. This is a frontal boundary right through here, southeast flow. Going to keep it socked in on the east side of the island there, and that will continue into tomorrow afternoon. Not really moving too fast there. Lowest flying conditions through here. Better conditions with the weakening front, just marginal for the southwest coast. And IFR tends to increase along the eastern Arctic coast, with VFR back to the west, and just some patchy marginal VFR there continuing again today for the eastern southeast coast near the border. Passes all VFR tomorrow. Brooks Range, Anaktuvik, Adigan, as well as the Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, and Rainy, as well as windy VFR. Isabel VFR, Mentasta, same forecast. And for Tanita, looking good. Portage, Even Portage VFR with Chilkoot and White, same forecast. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet now up to the south side of the southern slopes of the Eastern Brooks Range. 4,000 feet holding back here along the North Gulf Coast, 6,000 feet a little bit farther to the south. Moving on to icing with that front increasing moisture, southeast flow as the whole thing shifts eastward here. Could be some areas of possibly isolated moderate rime icing here in the shaded area that becomes a little less extensive and less chancy up here as you get up across Norton Sound. And then maybe some more out here over the central Aleutians, possibly more of a mixed variety. Jet stream ridging here tomorrow midday into the eastern Gulf. The whole pattern shifting eastward here. We've got the southwest flow working in here, splitting with a ridge over the interior tomorrow, which translates down to 9,000 feet. Some pretty strong easterlies, 30 to as high as 45 knots across the Barren Islands and into the southwest interior areas. And then back to the west, strong winds again, northeast turning north, 35 to 45 knots across the western central Aleutians. And 3,000 feet, that low center, about roughly the same position as at 9,000. Northeast, turn north 30 to 40 knots there into the central Aleutians. Easterlies 25 to 40 knots southwest coast into the interior, back across the Barren Islands. Much lighter winds for the Panhandle and, of course, the interior. Turbulence shaping up like this. Moderate chop, Fognac Island, the Barrens up to the southern Cook Inlet area to Aleutian Range, and pretty smooth here for the Panhandle. And with those northerlies below about 5,000 feet of the moderate chop variety for the Adak-Atka area. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film. And that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling. You know, it's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you're gonna preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term. But I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
Welcome back. With a weak surface ridge developing over the area and moving across the panhandle, winds will be on the very light side, light and variable here for all of the inside waters, to westerly at just 10 to 15 knots out along the coast, with seas just running 5 to 7 feet, so no small craft advisories. Different story though coming in Sunday, with southeasterlies 30 knots along all of the coast, increasing through the afternoon. Seas building 13 to 14 feet, Clarence Strait southeast coming up to 25 for small crafts there, and then just 15 knot southeasterly winds from Frederick Sound, Stevens Passage on up across Northern Lynn Canal. And for the Cook Inlet area tomorrow, 15 knots increase to 25 south of the Forelands, and then gales from the Barrens down across Shelikof Strait. 35 knot easterlies here. Again, the front lifting northward, so the gale force winds dropping off there for Kodiak in the afternoon. Probably this time tomorrow, even less than 25 knots. Small craft advisories, the North Gulf Coast. And Sunday, gales come up 30 to 40 knots out of the east there for the North Gulf Coast areas. Northeast picking up to 30 knots. Prince William Sound, seas 6, maybe 7 feet. Small craft advisories all at Cook Inlet. Strongest south of the Forelands. Gales again for the, gales Sunday for Kachemak Bay, 30 knots here, Shelikof Strait. Bristol Bay, east 25, dropping off to 15 as you head down the coastline here, and then southeast on the Pacific side, 15 to Castle Cape, 20 knots from Castle Cape to Siktonak. And then for Sunday, behind the system, northwest turning west, 20 knots for the peninsula, northeast 25, small craft advisories holding for Bristol Bay, and also southwesterlies at 25 knots there, southwest of Sitkinak. For the Aleutians, Unalaska Island, east-southeast at about 20 knots, lighter toward Nikolsky. Stronger here in that northerly wind field, 30 to 35 knot winds from roughly Atka, westward here to Amchitka, falling back a little bit toward the western zones, then swinging around with a ridge coming eastward. Southwest increasing to 25 knots. Mostly that 25-knot wind will be out towards Shemya. And then small craft advisories, northwest winds, pretty uniform wind pattern, central eastern Aleutians. Southwest coast, east-northeast 25 knots, northeast 25 tomorrow for St. Lawrence Island. So an increase in the winds across the entire area here, but just 20 for the Pribilofs. Sunday, northwest up to 30. That'll be the strong wind day there with small craft advisories northward all the way to St. Lawrence Island with 30-knot northerly winds. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 15 to 20 out of the east. That also extends to the central coast, falling back to 10 knots. Pretty light on the west side, all the way down, but northerly winds there from Cape Thompson down to Wales. And for Sunday, those come up to 20 knots there from the Bering Strait on up to about Cape Thompson, back down to 15 knots, and then 20 knots from the east across much of the coastline, falling back to maybe 15 there as you head toward Demarcation Point. And for tonight's forecast again, this front continues to weaken, especially through this portion, but back to the west will be stronger winds and areas of precipitation here, southwest coast, definitely on Kodiak Island. From the Aleutian Range south across the island, that's where the heaviest precipitation will be. No change over the southern interior, not much going on up to the north all the way to the Arctic coast. Variably cloudy, risk of a shower over the Panhandle. Big low center out there southwest in Nikolsky with the strong winds from there on out toward the western Aleutians. Continue tomorrow, and again still some 30 to 35 knot northerlies here. The central Aleutians, this one slipping off to the southeast, this one coming northward with more rain and wind coming into Kodiak Island tomorrow afternoon and evening, and then that shifts northward here, and it looks like pretty good gale force winds, at least in the forecast for now, for the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island. Rain for the southeast coast, mostly sunny over the interior again. Have a great weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.